Are you an entrepreneur thinking about starting a podcast? Before you hit record, there are definitely some things that you should consider. I'm not here to sell you on podcasting, but I am here to help you make the best decision for you and your business. If we haven't met yet, I'm Kate, and I've helped over 100 women entrepreneurs to launch their podcast. And today, I'm giving you the honest truth on how to make the decision if starting a podcast is right for you and your business. We're going to talk about how to determine if podcasting even fits into your business goals, why the audio medium is so powerful, and a spicy take that I have on why you might not need a weekly show, but how you can still leverage the power of audio and podcasting. So I think the first thing that we have to get out of the way and rip the Band-Aid off is there is no one size fits all answer to whether or not you should start a podcast for your business. There is so much nuance. There are so many things to consider. It is not black and white. And even though I am so passionate about the medium of podcasting that I've dedicated the last 5-6 years of my life to supporting women in launching podcasts and in managing their podcasts as a part of their business, I still think that you have to consider whether having a podcast is the right thing for you. And it's one of the most common questions I get, which is why I'm recording this video, is should I start a podcast? And usually women come to me from two different camps. One camp is they have had a dream, they have had it on their heart for years to have a podcast, to share their message, to share their voice in whatever way, whatever that looks like. And typically it is a component in relationship to their business, because whatever they're doing in their business is also that impact that they're having on the world. And so they've dreamed of having a podcast as a part of that. And then in the other camp is should I start a podcast? I see my colleagues doing it. I listen to podcasts myself. I can see how it can be beneficial to my business, but should I do it? Should I put the time and energy into starting a podcast and then making the commitment to doing it on a weekly, bi-weekly basis, whatever that looks like? And so the first question that I always ask, and that if someone comes to me from that camp, are your people listening to podcasts? Are the people in your community, the people that you're trying to connect with, the people that you are trying to work with, do they listen to podcasts? And this isn't necessarily like a black and white answer either, as far as, yes or no, because there is still like a spectrum and nuance here that for the most part, if we think about, people and their communities and the people they work with, there's probably a subset of people who do listen to podcasts, and there's probably a subset of people that don't. But it's important to think about the question and say, are my people listening to podcasts? Is that where they are? Is that where they're taking in content? And for the majority of my clients, they typically do have a subset of people that are listening to podcasts, and they have people that aren't. And so they may never reach those people with their podcast, and they're going to reach them in other ways. But the other thing that comes up with this is podcasting oversaturated? Am I late to the game? And, podcasts have been around for 10, 15, 20 years at this point. They're not new. But what's interesting is the research shows they are mainstream now. And that's good news, right? That's good news, because that means more people are listening to podcasts. And I'll pop up a graph here that shows the increase in this. But even though podcasts have been around for a long time, they are continuing to gain popularity, and they are continuing to attract listeners. So the medium itself has grown, and the medium itself has become more mainstream. So if it's a question of, is it oversaturated? Should I do it? I don't think that's the question that we really need to ask. The question we need to ask is, what part does a podcast play in my business, in my marketing strategy? That's the biggest question that you have to ask yourself. Because if you are in that camp of, well, I just see podcasting as this trendy thing to do. I see my colleagues doing it. I should just do it because everyone else is. I'm going to get left behind if I don't. I don't think that reasoning is going to be enough to really keep you in it. So we want to make sure that we are very clear on what is the podcast doing for my business, and what role does it play in my business, and how is it supportive of that and my marketing. So we want to get clear on what that looks like. And with this, the biggest thing that we need to understand is that for the most part, podcasting and your podcast is a nurture vehicle in your business. So it's not necessarily a lead generator. It's not necessarily a build it and they come, like I'm going to start a podcast and start putting out episodes and all of a sudden, like all these people are going to find me. That's not typically the role that we see podcasting play. Again, there's no black and white. There's no always never answers here. So there's always nuance. There's always different things that can happen. But for the most part, for over the 100 of women that I've worked with, it typically is not a discoverability tool for them. It is a lead nurturer for them in their business. That is the purpose that it's playing. And this is important to be clear on, because if you launch a podcast with the goal of it being a discoverability tool, then that could lead to disappointment. That could lead to, well, people aren't finding me through my podcast. My numbers aren't growing or whatever. And that could lead to disappointment, not being clear on that. And so it is important though to have some type of discoverability tool in your business. And if your main goal and your main business goal is, hey, I want more discoverability, I want more people to find me, then you may want to focus on something like YouTube or blogging, where there is discoverability built in. There's a little bit more organic search built in. You may be wanting to focus more on like a social media strategy. Again, if discoverability and like that's your biggest goal, like you want more people to find you, those might be the places that you want to invest your time and energy into instead. And you could be launching a podcast as a part of an overall discoverability strategy. So podcasting could be where you're creating long form content that you're repurposing into a blog, or you're taking that content and repurposing into a social media first strategy. So it is a part of a discoverability strategy, but it's not the only thing you're doing to be discovered. You have other things happening that are continuing to bring people into your world, whether it's organic or paid, like ads, or whether it's organic, like social media strategy or SEO and blogging and YouTube and those types of things, and bringing people into your world. And then more people are now knowing that you have a podcast and using it in the way that it's intended to be used, which is that nurture vehicle and the place where you are continuing to build the relationship, to build your authority, to build your thought leadership. And thinking about how podcasts really impact that nurture component of your marketing strategy, I want to talk about some statistics and some information that came out from a recent study done by Edison Research called The Podcast Consumer. And what they found was that podcasts create a deeper sense of intimacy, even more so than text and video, because they allow for the audience to feel like they're in a one-to-one conversation with the host. And another study done by Nielsen found that 72% of podcast listeners say that they feel a strong connection to the host that they listen to regularly. And this is so powerful because with podcasts, and this is why I'm so passionate about it as a medium, especially in the digital age and social media age that we live in, where it's really hard to capture and keep someone's attention. Even, just as far as like how fast people scroll through things. And even if you do capture their attention, let's say like on Instagram, and then they get a DM and a message pops down and they go there. And so now they're gone, right? So even if you capture it, it's really hard to keep it. And in my world, attention is the second most important currency to have, other than someone actually pulling out their wallet and paying you in your business. And I see attention and someone going to your podcast and clicking on an episode to play as almost like a micro conversion, where social media, I think there is some micro conversion components there too, like likes and comments, and definitely with potentially like DMs where someone sees it and they're taking some type of action. But sometimes I feel like people are also doing that sort of like aimlessly, you know what I mean? But someone going to your podcast feed and pressing play on an episode, to me, is so much more intentional and so much more of a, hey, I like what this person is doing, or this is connecting with me, and I want to go learn more. Like that first micro conversion of trust that says, I want to know more from you. And that's what I really see in when someone is doing that, when someone is clicking on that episode and hitting play to listen. And I think if you're here in business, our goal is to make sales, to bring more people into our world, to make sales, to sell our product, to create transformations for them, like whatever that looks like. And in the world of sales and business, we know how important those micro conversions are to ultimately someone buying our product or working with us. That's why we love lead magnets so much, because it's that micro conversion of someone giving us their email to say, hey, I trust you enough to give you my email and I want to get more value from you. I want to learn more from you. And knowing how important those micro conversions are to the trust building process in our business with the people that end up working with us or buying from us. And there is that component of podcasting to understand that it is a long game. It is typically not an overnight success, dopamine hit situation compared to social media where you can make posts, you can do stories, you get likes, you get reactions, you get comments. There's like this direct interaction happening all the time, which we won't even get into probably how problematic that is and how so many of us are probably in this like dopamine crisis in general. But with podcasting, that's just typically not there. You were like speaking into a microphone, you're talking to a camera, you're in an empty room by yourself, and you aren't necessarily getting that immediate feedback. And so then understanding if podcasting is something you want to incorporate into your business, this is something you're probably going to be in for the long term, for the long game, and just be ready to buckle up and enjoy the ride. And so I think it's really important that you're passionate about the medium itself. You're passionate about creating long form content. I think there are people out there whose talent and their passion is around creating short form content and around doing things like that. And for them, podcasting might not be a great option. Like they should continue to pour into what they're good at and continue to add fuel to the fire. This is where, again, like I don't think it's a one size fits all. Even though I think podcasting is so powerful, I still don't think everyone should have one. There are still the considerations that you need to make on whether it makes sense for you, what you like to do, what you feel like is going to connect best with your business, and what you feel like you can be in for the long haul. Because at the end of the day, any strategy in business is typically anything that actually works and is sustainable is typically a long game, and is something you're going to have to continue to put into over and over and over again. So you have to make sure that you actually want to do it and that you're passionate about it. I do want to say I also have an entire video going into the question of should I start a YouTube channel or a podcast? And I want you to check that out if that question is coming up for you, because there are considerations as far as does it make more sense for me to start a YouTube channel and do that and have that discoverability there, or does it not make sense for me and my business? So I talk through things to consider. What are the pros? What are the cons? Digging into that. So go check that out. And I will say though that I do firmly believe that if you are someone who is on YouTube and you have a YouTube first strategy and you have a YouTube channel and you're a talking head and you're creating educational, inspirational content similar to this, then you need to have a podcast feed. Because with what I talked about with the statistics and how powerful podcasting is at capturing and keeping attention, for a lot of people, just the format of being able to pull it up on their phone and listen to it on the go, for so many people, that's easier than pulling up YouTube and trying to find, your channel and going to your video. And the other thing is really to that point, YouTube is still algorithm based. So YouTube, when someone opens up their app, the algorithm is still going to determine what they see. And again, they can, click into your video if you're promoting it on social, or you have an email where you're like, go watch this video, that type of thing. But for the most part, like if they just go into the YouTube app to say like, hey, what do I want to learn about today? You may show up there. You may not. If they really want to learn from you, they're going to have to go to your channel and go to your videos. With a podcast app, it is not algorithm based. So it is based on when someone posted a new episode. So when they go to, hey, what do I want to listen to today? And they go on their app and they say, most recent, and you've posted, you're going to show up there. Because if they followed your show, if they've said, hey, I want to learn from this person, I want to learn more from them. That's not necessarily the case on YouTube, even if they subscribe to your channel. So I think for anyone pouring into YouTube, pulling the audio and putting it into a podcast feed is a no-brainer. Like you need to be doing that because you need to be where people are consuming content. And there's just such a low barrier of entry. If you're already putting the work into creating the video, editing the video, all the things, then just take the audio and pull it into a podcast feed and put it there. So I will say that's my take there is if you do have a podcast channel and you are teaching and doing this format of video, please put it into a podcast feed so that you can reach more people and you can connect even deeper with people through the medium of audio. And for my people who have gotten to the end of this video and you're like, yeah, I'm not sure that a podcast is for me. I'm not sure that I'm in a season of my life or my business where I am ready to invest in this type of long-term strategy for my marketing. If you've kind of gotten to that point and you're like, yeah, I'm not sure a podcast is for me. There are other options that for the person who is like, yeah, this isn't for me, or I don't recommend that they have a podcast. There are other options that you can still use to leverage the podcasting format and the audio format to your advantage. And one of those ways is to have a mini private podcast funnel. So what this looks like is people have to opt in to receive the link to listen. So that's why it's more of a funnel, because they're having to give you their email and then you're giving them that link and then they listen to your mini series. So this is something that you can create once, and there's a strategy around this, and I have videos that go into that, but you can do something like that where you're creating it once and you have this asset that you can use and you're connecting with people still through audio and utilizing the podcast format to build a relationship and to build authority, but it's just in this like condensed series versus committing to a weekly show. So for some people, like that's a great option, especially for my clients who come to me and we look at what does this look like? And they're like, yeah, in this season of my life, I don't think I can commit to a weekly show, but I do still want to have some type of podcast component of my business. That's one thing we look at. The other thing that you can do is really look at and leverage a podcast guesting strategy. And this is what it sounds like. This is going and being a guest on other people's podcasts and just having that collaboration and getting in front of other people's audience. Like you can still really leverage the power of what podcasting can do for your business, especially if those opportunities are aligned, if you are, strategic on what shows you get on. Like there is a strategy there, and it's not wise to just go like find a bunch of podcasts and guest on them. You want it to be a good use of your time. But podcast guesting is a way that you can use it without, again, having to have your own show. And it's one of those things that once you're on, let's say you get on like 10, 15 shows, you can have a page on your website that says like, here's all the podcasts that I've been featured on, go listen. You can send people from social, from your email list to those podcasts to listen and to serve the same purpose of building that relationship and deepening that connection through the audio format. So that's an option as well. Also, if you are thinking, no, I think podcast is for me, podcast guesting is still a great strategy for you and in growing your show and in getting in front of other people's audiences on podcasts where they're already listening to connect with them and potentially bring them to your own show. We still see that as a great growth strategy. And the other thing about both of those as options is I see those as like almost a way to dip your toe in the water to see like, is this for me? Do I enjoy doing it? Do I like talking into a microphone, to practice, to do those things and to see and to get some data on, does this connect? Do my people like this? Do people want more of this? Is this helping grow my business? Like what does this look like? So you can have the data to make a data-backed decision, which I love. And so it can be a way for you to almost like try it out before you dive into the commitment of a weekly, bi-weekly, or a consistent show. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this was helpful in making that decision of, should I start a podcast? Does it make sense for me? Does it make sense for my business? And again, if you're sort of in between that, like, should I start a YouTube channel or a podcast? I'll link the video to that here because I think that's an important conversation and an important thing to look at. So definitely check that out, dive into that as well, and I'll see you next time.